Children, we go ahead to the next topic, that is Stalinism and collectivization. Now, what is Stalinism? Now, after the death of Lenin in 1924, the Communist Party, which was also called as the Bolshevik Party, was now taken over by Stalin. So he was heading the party, Stalin, and whatever his ideas he put forward during that time, this period is called as Stalinism. So earlier it was started by Lenin, and then it is taken over by Stalin. And what is collectivization? Collectivization is combining all the lands, all the small lands, like you have learnt it in India also. We have small land holdings. All the farmers have very small lands with themselves. So combining all these lands and making it into a bigger land, and then performing agriculture on a collective basis. Everyone will jointly do their work, and the profits are going to be distributed equally among all. So that is collectivization. So we'll read about Stalin's policies after Lenin, how he carried over his legacy, and then we'll see the policy of collectivization. Children, we look into the policy of collectivization started by Stalin and what were the reasons for him to start this policy. We see by 1927 and 1928, Soviet Russia was facing a shortage of food grains, especially in the towns. Why did I say Soviet Russia? Because it was a huge country where many other countries had joined. It was called as USSR, Union of Many States. Now, to overcome this, the government fixed the prices at the grains that must be sold. So the government had put a seal, you can only sell it at this price. But the peasants refused to sell their grains to the government at these prices set by the government. They refused. As we are working so hard, we are not going to sell at the fixed price set by the government. So you can see here in 1927, 1928 there was huge shortage, so the government fixed the prices and the peasants refused to sell at the prices fixed by the government. Stalin believed that these rich farmers and traders in the countryside were holding the stock in the hope of getting higher prices. So we see even in our country, when the demand is more and the supply is less, the prices go up, isn't it? So probably they believe that if we hold it now, we'll get a higher price later on if we sell it. So they did not agree to the prices fixed by the government. Yes, so you can see he was against those rich peasants and traders. Now what did he do? In order to stop all this, he said this speculation must be stopped and all the supplies should be taken away forcefully, confiscated, to be taken away forcefully. So grain producing areas were toured by the party and supervising enforced grain collection, raiding kulaks. So you can see here in 1928, the party members of the Communist Party, they toured the area, the fields, wherever the grains were produced, and the rich farmers' houses were raided. They're called as kulaks. Their name given to the rich farmers. Kulaks are the name given to rich farmers. Their fields were raided and the grains were taken away forcefully by the government. Now Stalin believed that by stopping speculation and by confiscating the grains from the rich farmers would improve the situation. But despite this, there was still shortage of grains continued. And now people or his advisors argued that this shortage was due to the fact that there were small size holdings of lands. You remember small size holding of lands? We have learned it in class 8. In India also, our farmers' lands are very small, and that's the reason why more production cannot be done. So you remember the lands were given to the farmers, seized from the nobility, and they all got small sizes of land. So one of the reasons why production could not increase was everyone had very small land with them. So now, and in a small land, they could not modernize that land, they could not use modern machines on it, and that was the reason for the grain shortage. So now, what were the steps taken by Stalin to improve this? Children, you see, the reason for the shortage of food was given that the farmers had small land holdings, small pieces. You can see here small pieces of land for each farmer. So that was the reason why there was shortage of food, and in these small farms, modern machines could not be used. So for that, to improve the situation and so increase the food grain production, Stalin came up with his new program in 1929 called Collectivization Program. Now, what was the collectivization program? He wanted to modernize the farm so that food grains could be produced in large quantities. So he said that farm should run like an industry. Or we have learned it in class 8 how the industrial system works. There are inputs, processes, and outputs. So like a machinery, all machinery should be used and it should work like an industry. Now for that they had to eliminate the kulaks. And now who are the kulaks? The rich, well-to-do farmers. Take away all the lands. All the land will be one big piece of land which will be controlled by the government. Large state-controlled farms. It will be controlled by the government, and the farmers will be asked to grow crops. Whatever the profit is earned will be shared among the peasants and farmers. So this was his program of collectivization. Do you think the people were willing to do this? No. There were many problems in this collectivization program. Now, the collectivization program started by Stalin. The peasants from 1929, the peasants were forced to cultivate in collective farms. It was called as kolkhoz. Now, and they said you have to do it in a collective way and the profit will be shared among all of you. But the peasants were very angry and they resisted this, and in protest they destroyed all their livestock, all their cattle they destroyed. And those who resisted collectivization, who said we did not agree, were severely punished or were deported or were exiled. So you can see here in this next, they destroyed their livestock. Can you see? They were so angry with this program of collectivization. Okay, but you will now ask me a question that earlier I told you Russian peasants were natural socialists, that they all helped each other by collecting their farms. So when they were doing it on their own, they were very happy. But when it was forced on them by the government, they did not want to agree to it. So in spite of this collectivization, production did not increase. Okay, and we see a very bad harvest took place between 1930 and 1933, devastating 4 million people. Okay, there were 4 million deaths. In spite of this collectivization program, production did not increase. You can see here, bad harvest, people are not getting any food. You can see their faces, malnutrition, okay, and 4 million deaths. Now, people of the Communist Party, Stalin's own party, started criticizing him for his kind of collectivization program and the industrial production that he had started. Okay, but these critics were now charged. They were also punished. Whoever criticized him were punished. He said that they were going against the principle of socialism. So they were charged, and over 2 million people were put in prisons or labor camps. They were forced, and some of them even in prison, they were forced to make false confession that no, everything is correct going on with the policy of Stalin. They were executed, they were killed also, and some of them were very talented people, professionals. But he went ahead with his policy of collectivization in spite of criticism. He imprisoned them, he sent them to labor camps, and you can see by 1939 2 million people either put in jail or labor camps, made to do hard work. So this was the policy of Stalinism and his program of collectivization. So children, we move ahead to the last topic of this lesson, the global influence of the Russian Revolution and the USSR. Now children, there were many socialist parties which were formed in Europe, like the one in Great Britain. It is called the Communist Party of Great Britain was also formed. There were many other socialist parties that were formed. But we see many of these socialist parties did not like the way the Bolshevik really took over power in Russia. They did not agree with them, the way they have taken over power in Russia. But they were at least now happy that the principle of socialism could now create they could create a government which worked for the welfare of the workers. So they were happy that this principle was working. The principle of socialism could be working as it has they've seen it in Russia. That this principle can work, and then create a government which worked for the welfare of the workers. So they were happy with the principle of socialism, but they did not like the way the Bolshevik party took over power in Russia. Okay, and we see with this many other countries now also parties were formed in many other countries around the world who believed in the principles of socialism. So even in India we had the Communist Party formed. We have example in Great Britain also there was a Communist Party of Great Britain formed. So there were many others parties, and these Bolshevik parties now invited and encouraged people to come to their country and experience the style of working that they were doing. So lots of conferences were held. So we see many countries participated in this conference called the Congress of the Peoples of the East, and the Bolshevik Party also made another conference which was called as Communist International or Comintern, where many of other countries participated in this conference. Okay, and even then they are also gave education to people, and they make who came to this university, USSR Communist University of the Workers of the East. So they invited people to come and study in their university. Now, by the time the Second World started, the socialism became a very, very popular philosophy, and it created a kind of aura among the all, and everyone wondered that this is one of the best type of government that we can have in the world. So it created a world stature for this, the word socialism. Russia showed the world that how they can go ahead and follow this principle of socialism. Children, but by 1950 it was realized that Russian government was not working on the principles of socialism. Although they had become a huge country with lots of power resources, industries were growing, they were growing really powerful, they had lots of agriculture, so much of agriculture inputs that they could feed their people and also export it. But there was a lot of development going on, but with repressive measures that they curtailed the freedom of the people. They did not have the right to speak. So everyone wondered that this is not the way the socialism should work. It is for the workers, so they should have their rights. And although they are advancing, but somehow after 1950 the philosophy of socialism started declining, and then we see the breakup of USSR, which was aligned with so many countries. Everyone started breaking away from USA, and today it's no longer USSR, it is just Russia. All these small countries have broken away from Russia. So we see this philosophy from 1950 it started declining. Children, let us recap this topic again. So we see lots of communist parties being formed outside Russia. One of the famous communist party was the Communist Party of Great Britain, and this Bolshevik party, that is also Communist Party of Russia, encouraged other people to come and to their country and follow their experiment of putting forward the principle of socialism. And then conferences were held and people joined these conferences. It was a conference People of the East, or Comintern, was held. The full form is an International Union of Pro-Bolshevik Socialist Party. So all these conferences were held. Then they also invited people to study in their universities, which was the USSR Communist Universities of Workers of the East. And by Second World War, USA had given socialism a global face. Everyone thought this is the best principle that everyone could follow, and everyone was looking at Russia in awe. Okay, but as the years progressed, by 1950, it was observed that this was not the kind of socialism that USSR was following, which fought for the ideals, the same ideals as the Russian Revolution. It is not the same. Now, although it has become a great power, it has lots of industries, agriculture had developed, it was having lots of grains were being produced, it could feed its people and also export. But all these development was there, but it denied the people the freedom right to speak. So people now did not, and this idea started declining. People now realized that this is not the socialist country that Russia had fought for. So this idea started declining, and now many countries broke away from USSR. So you see now it is after 91 many countries broke out from USSR, so it's no longer USSR, it is Russia. But still people respect the ideals of socialism. Okay, so everyone respects this idea of socialism, but finally Russia was not able to keep up to the ideals of socialism that it had during the Russian Revolution. So, children, just to recap the principle of socialism, it is a society where the means of productions are owned by the government or the workers, and the profit is equally shared among them. And this kind of a society works for the welfare of all. So, there is no rich, no poor. It is a communist society. So, children, this socialism would lead to a communist society where there will be no class among people, and all the wealth will be distributed equally among all, and people will live in peace and harmony. But this kind of a society, although they tried, but it did not live up to the expectation of what the Russian Revolution had been fought for. So with this, we come to the end of this chapter, Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Please do give your feedback. Thank you.